You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Failure in projects is inevitable, but failure does not need to be fatal. Ethical and professional project managers recognize that failure is data for system improvement. Instead of covering mistakes, the right instinct is to contain issues safely, learn from what happened, implement corrective measures, and design preventative safeguards for the future. This process is called CAPA corrective and preventative action. Corrective action fixes what went wrong. Preventative action ensures it does not happen again. The artifacts that capture these lessons include the incident report, a detailed timeline, decision and issue logs, the updated risk register, a CAPA tracker, lessons learned records, and the change log. PMI's lens remains structured: contain the problem, learn from it, correct it, prevent recurrence, and communicate throughout. Scenario 1 focuses on a production incident with customer impact. Imagine an outage that causes partial data loss, and sponsors press for a status update within the hour. Your options are to patch silently without disclosure, contain the issue with transparent communication while preparing a blameless post-mortem, assign public blame to individuals, or delay the report. The ethical and professional response is clear: contain the issue, communicate facts promptly, run a blameless post-mortem, and implement corrective fixes with rollback safeguards. Hiding or delaying erodes trust. Blaming individuals publicly undermines psychological safety. PMI expects you to model discipline by restoring service responsibly and preserving trust through transparency. Artifacts for this response include the incident report detailing what happened, the decision log recording containment steps, and the communication record showing what stakeholders were told and when. The post-mortem captures the root causes and the corrective actions applied. Rollback plans and test evidence provide assurance that the fix was safe. By documenting transparently and avoiding blame, you reinforce both responsibility and respect. PMI situational stems will often frame tempting shortcuts like silent patches or delayed updates, but the right answer is always transparent containment paired with evidence of corrective action. Scenario 2 deals with repeated defects emerging from the same root cause. Teams may instinctively suggest, quote, just add more testers, but inspection alone cannot compensate for a broken process. The better option is to use Pareto analysis to identify the top causes, update the process to remove those causes, adjust the definition of done or the quality plan to include new checks, and verify that the changes reduce recurrence. Preventive action is the hallmark here. Quality is built into the process, not tested in afterward. Accepting defects as normal or hiding metrics fails both responsibility and honesty. PMI rewards systemic prevention over cosmetic fixes. Scenario 3 highlights a governance or change failure. An emergency change was implemented without following policy, and an audit is coming soon. The pressures are obvious: backdate approvals to clean the record, delete logs to avoid detection, or hope the audit misses the lapse. Each of these is unethical and indefensible. The ethical response is to document the exception transparently, tighten the emergency change policy, train staff on the revised process, and even simulate drills to test readiness. By doing this, you acknowledge the gap, demonstrate corrective action, and show preventative measures. PMI values transparency over perfection. The goal is not to avoid findings, but to show honest remediation. Artifacts here include the change log, updated with the emergency action and rationale, the exception record, training records for the revised emergency policy, and drill results showing readiness. Auditors respect evidence of learning more than false perfection. If logs are falsified or approvals are backdated, trust collapses and penalties follow. PMI situational questions will test whether you choose the honest but sometimes uncomfortable path of documentation and training, or the dishonest shortcut of altering history. The professional answer is always to document truthfully, correct transparently, and train for prevention. Scenario 4 focuses on communication and trust rebuild after failure. Once an incident occurs, it is not enough to fix the technical issue. You must also rebuild trust with stakeholders. Ethical communication means sharing facts, impacts, and fixes in clear language. Publishing timelines, FAQs, and status dashboards ensures transparency. Thanking those who reported or responded demonstrates respect and reinforces psychological safety. Importantly, you avoid blame language in all communication, focusing on what went wrong in the system rather than who erred individually. PMI emphasizes that trust is rebuilt not by spin, but by openness and respect. Artifacts for trust rebuild include communication records showing consistent messaging, stakeholder feedback logs from briefings, and updates to FAQs or customer documents. Review checkpoints with stakeholders ensure that progress on corrective and preventive actions is visible. This closes the loop and prevents speculation. By communicating openly, thanking contributors, and documenting consistently, you demonstrate responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty, the 4 PMI values applied in recovery. Situational stems will often test whether you hide, delay, or spin communication. The professional path is always to disclose facts, show corrective actions, and engage stakeholders respectfully. At this midpoint, the rhythm of recovery is visible. Incidents are contained transparently, not hidden. Quality gaps are prevented systemically, not patched cosmetically. Governance failures are documented honestly, not falsified. Trust is rebuilt through consistent communication, not through blame or spin. PMI wants project managers to understand that failure is not the end of credibility. It is the beginning of credibility, if handled correctly. The exam will reward answers that emphasize containment, transparency, systemic fixes, preventative safeguards, and communication. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Corrective and preventative action, often shortened to CAPA, is the structured mechanism that turns post-mortem insights into durable improvements. Corrective actions address the specific failure that already occurred, patching a defect, retraining a team, or adding monitoring to a fragile process. Preventative actions go further. They change the system so that the same class of failures does not occur again. Each CAPA item must have a clear owner, a due date, and measurable success metrics. Without owners, CAPA becomes a wish list. Without due dates, it drifts indefinitely. Without metrics, no one knows whether the action actually worked. PMI emphasizes that CAPA is not cosmetic. It is accountability in action. Verification of effectiveness is the heart of CAPA. It is not enough to check a box saying training completed or procedure updated. The question is, did incidents of that type actually decrease? Did the new procedure withstand a stress test? Did the added control catch errors before they reached customers? Only with evidence can a CAPA be retired. That evidence may include defect trend charts, results of simulated drills, or independent audit findings. Project managers must be disciplined in refusing to retire CAPAs until evidence is in hand. PMI situational stems often test whether you prematurely close CAPA or insist on verification. CAPA also connects to other artifacts. The risk register should be updated when preventative actions reduce exposure. Change control should reflect new processes or standards introduced by CAPA. Issue logs should reference CAPA items when closing recurring issues. Lessons learned databases should capture CAPA outcomes so future teams can avoid rediscovering the same fixes. By linking CAPA to these artifacts, you ensure that corrective and preventative actions are not siloed. They become part of the project system. PMI's exam will often look for whether you make these linkages or treat CAPA as isolated paperwork. Institutionalizing learning means moving beyond one-off KPIs into systemic improvement. A lessons learned library must be searchable, concise, and accessible so teams can find prior incidents and avoid repeating mistakes. Pre-mortems, where teams brainstorm what might go wrong, embed prevention before incidents occur. Chaos drills, where teams simulate failures deliberately, build readiness and confidence. Readiness reviews, scheduled before key milestones, verify that CAPAs and lessons learned have been integrated. Standards, templates, and training materials should all be updated when new insights emerge. This is how organizations become resilient, by embedding learning into their DNA. When organizations neglect institutional learning, the same issues recur, often with greater cost. Teams say, "We'll remember next time." But without artifacts, memory fades. PMI expects you to recognize that remembering is not enough. Prevention requires updates to processes, training, and tools. For example, if a missed approval caused a failure, the change control template should be updated to include mandatory approval checks. If a training gap caused incidents, onboarding programs should be revised. Ethics requires that we honor the lessons of failure by making them visible and permanent, not ephemeral. Exam pitfalls in CAPA scenarios are common. Cosmetic fixes adding testers instead of fixing processes are traps. Assigning blame or punishing individuals may feel cathartic, but undermines psychological safety and prevents learning. Backdating approvals or altering logs to clean up history is dishonest and non-compliant. Saying "we'll remember next time" without documented preventative action is ineffective. Another trap is closing CAPA without verification or failing to assign owners and due dates. The heuristic to apply is run a blameless post-mortem, create CAPA items with owners and dates, and verify effectiveness before closing. PMI situational stems reward this structured, ethical rhythm. Consider a mini scenario. A service team faces repeated pages outside business hours due to noisy alerts. Staff are exhausted and morale is dropping. The wrong response would be to simply accept the noise as part of the job, or to rotate on-call more frequently without reducing incidents. The correct next action is to analyze triggers, automate filtering of false positives, and adjust staffing or escalation policies. Corrective actions include fixing the current alerts. Preventative actions include automation, updated runbooks, and retrained staff. Success is measured not by pages acknowledged, but by a sustained drop in after-hours incidents. Artifacts for this scenario include the incident log, updated with analysis of triggers, the CAPA tracker, showing automation tasks and training assigned with owners, and updated runbooks with time-stamped revisions. Verification comes from metrics, a trend line showing fewer after-hours pages over time. By documenting this, you not only restore morale, but also demonstrate integrity to auditors and sponsors. PM, I will test whether you choose systemic fixes over surface-level rotations or blame. The professional answer is always systemic prevention with evidence. The quick playbook for recovery after failure is straightforward. First, contain safely stabilized systems without cutting corners. Second, tell the truth. Communicate facts openly, without delay or spin. Third, run a blameless post-mortem focusing on systemic factors rather than individuals. Fourth, implement CAPA-assigned corrective and preventative actions with owners and due dates. Fifth, verify effectiveness, require evidence before closing actions. Sixth, fold CAPA outcomes into standards, templates, and training. Seventh, track trends, monitor incident frequencies, defect rates, and control effectiveness over time. Finally, celebrate prevention, not heroics. Recognize teams for avoiding issues, not just for firefighting. Celebrating prevention shifts culture. Too often, organizations glorify the hero who saves the day during a crisis while neglecting the quiet prevention work that avoided dozens of crises. Ethical project managers invert this. They praise the updates to processes that eliminated recurring defects or the training that stopped incidents before they started. This cultural shift reinforces responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. Responsibility is shown in owning failures. Respect is shown in blameless post-mortems. Fairness is shown in applying CAPA consistently. Honesty is shown in refusing to alter records or hide gaps. PMI's exam questions test whether you embody these values when pressure rises. The final reflection of this capstone episode is that recovery after failure is not about restoring the status quo, it's about moving forward stronger. Post-mortems, kappa, and institutional learning turn pain into progress. For project managers, the challenge is resisting shortcuts, hiding issues, blaming people, or settling for cosmetic fixes. The professional path is transparent, systemic, and preventative. When you lead with this mindset, stakeholders trust that even when things go wrong, your project is in responsible hands. That is what PMI wants to see in both exam answers and in real-world practice. Calm, ethical, disciplined recovery that leaves the system healthier than before. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.